There are two kinds of tired. There's the kind that puts you to sleep the moment your head hits the pillow, and there's the kind that stretches you so thin that your body shuts down, but your brain keeps running, processing every sound, every shift in the air, every degree of darkness in the room around you. I was the second kind the night I checked into the Hargrove Inn outside of Columbus, Ohio, and I think that's the only reason I'm alive to tell this story. I was 31 years old, traveling alone for a regional sales conference that my company had no business sending me to. 11 hours of driving over 2 days, the kind of trip where you stop caring about the quality of the mattress and start caring only about whether the door locks. I pulled into the Hargrove Inn parking lot at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late November, and the first thing I noticed was that the parking lot was almost entirely empty. 4 cars in a lot designed for 60. The vacancy sign buzzed a slow orange pulse against the dark. The lobby smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and something else. Beneath it, something organic and closed in that I couldn't name. The man behind the desk was somewhere in his 50s, heavy-set, with the slow movements of someone who had been sitting in the same chair for 8 hours. He processed my booking without making eye contact, slid a key card across the counter, and told me checkout was at 11. "Third floor," he said. "Elevator's on your left." The hallway on the third floor was long and dim, not dark, but underlit. The kind of fluorescent that turns everything the color of old newspaper. Most of the room doors had their privacy lights on. I found 319 at the far end, let myself in, and stood for a moment just inside the door. The room looked fine. Standard layout. Queen bed, desk, armchair, window facing the parking lot, television mounted on the wall. I did what I always do in unfamiliar rooms. I checked the bathroom, looked behind the shower curtain, confirmed the window was locked, and then I sat on the edge of the bed and let out a breath. I'd been holding for 11 hours. I was asleep by 12:30. I woke at 2:14 a.m. to a sound I couldn't immediately place. Not loud, the opposite. Something soft and deliberate moving across the floor near the door. I lay still for a moment with my eyes open and listened to the room recalibrate around me. The air conditioning unit, the distant mechanical hum of the elevator, the particular silence of a building where most people are unconscious. Then I heard it again. A dry, papery sound, something sliding across the gap beneath the door. I turned on the bedside lamp and sat up. On the floor near the door, a folded piece of paper lay against the baseboard, white against the dark carpet. I stared at it for several seconds before getting up. I picked it up, unfolded it. I stood in the center of the room, holding the note, and felt the specific quality of fear that comes not from what you see, but from what you understand. Someone was directly outside my door at this moment, and they had been watching the gap of light beneath it. I did not open the door. I crossed to it quickly and engaged the chain lock, then stepped back and looked at the peephole. The fisheye lens showed an empty hallway, but peepholes have a narrow field of view, and I was aware of that. I sat on the bed with my back against the headboard and the lamp on, and tried to think clearly. A prank, a drunk guest on the wrong floor, someone with the wrong room. All of these explanations existed, and none of them felt true. The note was too specific. You found it. That implied anticipation. That implied the note had been placed with the expectation of being found, and someone waiting to confirm it. 22 minutes passed. I know because I watched the clock on the bedside table with the focused attention of someone with nothing else to do. At 2:36, the second note appeared. The sliding sound was slower this time. Careful. I was already on my feet before it finished moving across the carpet. I picked it up without unfolding it first. Just held it for a moment, preparing myself. "I was in your room this afternoon before you checked in. I watched the housekeeper clean it. I've been in most of the rooms on this floor. I like to know the layout before the guests arrive." My hand was shaking slightly as I set the note on the desk. The room felt different now. Not just a room I was sleeping in, but a space that had been visited, observed, catalogued by someone I had never seen. I looked at the window. "Third floor?" The lock appeared engaged. I checked it anyway, pressing the latch hard, and it held. I picked up my phone and considered calling the front desk. Then I remembered the empty parking lot, the man behind the desk with his slow movements and his refusal to make eye contact. The note said I've been in most of the rooms on this floor. That implied access. That implied a key. Who had keys to every room on the third floor? I pushed the desk chair under the door handle as an additional brace and sat on the bed and waited. The third note came at 3:09 a.m. I heard the sound and walked to the door and picked it up and unfolded it and read it. And for a moment I simply stood there in the lamplight, holding a piece of paper with 6 words on it. I'm already in the room with you. I spun around. The room was as I had left it: bed, desk, armchair, the dark rectangle of the bathroom doorway. I made myself walk to the bathroom and flipped the light on. Empty. I checked behind the shower. Curtain, empty. I looked under the bed. I opened the closet. 4 wire hangers and the hotel's ironing board. I pulled back the curtains from the window. Parking lot, 4 cars. Orange vacancy sign, darkness, no, 1. But that didn't settle anything. It made it worse, because one of 2 things was true. Either someone had slipped all 3 notes under the door, as a calculated psychological exercise, knowing exactly what the 3rd one would do to me, or the room had a second point of entry I hadn't found. I grabbed my bag, shoved everything into it without folding anything, and looked through the peephole one more time. Empty hallway. I undid the chain lock in the desk. Chair brace. Simultaneously, and pulled the door open, fast, and stepped into the corridor. At the far end of the hallway, just before the turn toward the elevator, a shadow moved. Not a person, the edge of a person, the shape of someone stepping back and out of sight with the particular, unhurried precision of someone who was expecting this moment. I ran for the stairs. The man at the front desk did not believe me. He was different from the one who had checked me in, younger, thinner, with the defensive posture of someone who had been trained to manage complaints rather than investigate them. He listened to everything I said with his hands flat on the counter and his expression carefully neutral, and then he told me there were only 2 other registered guests on the 3rd floor, and both had been in their rooms all night. I'd like someone to check my room, I said. The window specifically. He came upstairs with me. The room looked undisturbed. The notes were on the desk where I had left them, and he read them with that same careful neutrality, and I watched his face and couldn't tell if he was performing calm or genuinely felt it. Someone's idea of a joke, he said. Then you won't mind checking the window. He checked it. The latch moved easily, too easily. He had to admit, pulling it back and forth twice. The paint around the frame was scratched in the way that paint gets scratched when a window is opened repeatedly over time. Someone had been using this window, whether from the outside via a ladder or from the inside for reasons I didn't want to think about. The latch had been compromised. His face changed, just slightly, a tightening around the eyes. I'll flag this for maintenance, he said. I checked out at 3:45 in the morning and drove to a Marriott 40 minutes north and paid 3 times what I'd paid at the Hargrove. I lay on their clean, firm mattress and stared at the ceiling until the sky outside began to gray, and I thought about the 3rd note. I'm already in the room with you. No one had been in the room. I'd checked everywhere. The only explanation I kept returning to, the one I didn't want to hold, was that whoever had been sliding notes under the door had done it precisely to provoke that search, to make me check every corner, to make me feel the specific terror of a space that should be safe becoming unreliable. The notes may have been the entire point, not to announce a presence, to install a fear. I called the Hargrove the next morning. A woman answered. I don't know if she worked the desk or managed the property. I asked if they had reviewed their security footage from the 3rd floor hallway overnight. She said their cameras on that floor had been offline for scheduled maintenance. I asked when they'd gone offline. She paused before answering. Yesterday afternoon, she said. Around 3 in the afternoon, before I had checked in. I asked her who would have known the cameras were offline. She said she couldn't share that information, and her voice had shifted to the careful register of someone who has been told by management to say as little as possible. I never filed a police report. I've thought about why, and the honest answer is that I had 3 notes that said disturbing things and a compromised window latch and a shadow at the end of a hallway, and none of that assembles into anything a report could address. No one had touched me. Nothing had been taken. The law has limited jurisdiction over fear. What I think about now, years later, is the timing. The notes arrived at 2:14, 2:36, and 3:09, 22 minutes between the 1st and 2nd, 33 minutes between the 2nd and 3rd. The intervals were increasing. Someone was making me wait longer each time, letting the silence accumulate, letting my mind do the work. That's not impulsive. That's not a drunk guest on the wrong floor. That's someone who understood the architecture of dread and was building something in me. Room by room, note by note, the way you'd renovate a space you plan to occupy for a while. I still travel for work. I still stay in hotels. but I check the window latch before I check anything else now. And I sleep with the desk chair under the handle. And I have never once in the years since left a gap of light under the door, because I know someone might be watching for it. And I know now that they might be patient enough to wait until you find out.